So we will begin with item F1, the Annual Wellness Council Report.
Be coming up shortly. I accidentally turned off the computer.
Okay. Would you like us to move to F2 first, or do you think it's going to come up?
It
Looks
should
like
come
it's,
up
it
pretty
looks like
fast.
it's coming up. Okay.
I'm
And
so
we have
sorry.
a staff presentation, and Monica, if I could pronounce your last name, I would. How do you
Sounds like graffiti.
sound? Scafidi?
You got it.
There we go. So Monica Scafidi, the district's wellness counselor chair, will be
Great.
here to present a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to remind us that we have scheduled 15 minutes for this item, which hopefully does include the board's comments as well. So thank
Good.
you.
So, yeah, so you just lost a minute due to technical difficulties, so it's 14 minutes now.
This is why Dave Hetyoung should always be sitting here.
We'll be able to tell him he was missed.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I agree. He's the expert at this room, this station.
Well, I can start with thank yous anyway. Thank you, Board President Cordero, for having me, Vice President, Board Member Deacon, Board Member Parker, Board Member Limon, and Board Member Herron. Thank you for fitting us into the agenda so we can share with you our successes that we've seen this year. And good news is we don't have a budget to talk about, and we only have good things to report. We have no negative things, so that's what makes this part of the job really fun. I am a math teacher at Dos Pueblos, and I like to say that teaching math is my profession, but food is really my passion. So when Debbie asked me in December if I'd be willing to take the chair position, I enthusiastically responded with a yes, because that's my passion, all about food and eating well.
So here is a pointer, and here
Okay.
is forward and backwards.
Got it. And it's still coming, or?
It's coming up.
Okay. I had this great line I was going to start with, thanking Dr. Sarvis for his support of the Wellness Council and his enthusiasm in keeping the Wellness Council going. And I was also wanting to thank Dr. Cash for hiring me 9 years ago. But they're not here, so my joke didn't go over well. Okay, so here we are. Wellness Committee, again, Debbie Badger handed off the baton to me in December, so she had conducted 2 meetings in October and January, and then I conducted the last 2 meetings in March and May. And we're put together by a steering committee who I feel like are really the backbone of the committee. Verity Allen, Susan Horn and Jerry Waite, both from County Public Health, and our very own Nancy Weiss from Nutrition Services. So a little bit of background. In 2004, state law required school districts to establish a wellness policy by 2006. At that time, I saw a flyer from Susan Horn at Dos Pueblos, and I started to get a little bit involved in helping to write the policy. The policy requires the district to do 3 things: create nutrition guidelines for all food sold on campus, create goals for nutrition education and physical activity, and create a plan for ensuring that the policy is implemented. And I believe that insurance began with SNAC, which was the Superintendent's Nutrition Advisory Council, and that has been morphed. I think it's got a little bit of a sweeter name now as Wellness Council. So that's where we came from. This year, like I said, we had 4 meetings, and thank you to Board Member Deacon and Herron and Limon for attending several of those meetings with us. We're made up of all volunteers, so those people that come to the meetings include nutrition services staff, teachers, parents, public health employees, and the Sansom Diabetes Research Institute staff is Rose Linehan. She's at Santa Barbara High, and she comes regularly to the meetings as well. Last year, the steering committee developed a wellness policy assessment. So it's used as a tool for sites to kind of gauge themselves and decide how closely are we meeting the wellness policy, where are we needing to have improvement, and where are we doing well. So we completed 2 of these this year. Each site was supposed to complete 2 of them, one at mid-year and one at the end of the year, so that we could see progress made. Only 57% of the schools completed them the first time and only 29 the second time. We're hoping for better turnout next year, and that's one of my goals for next year. The other good news, though, is that Wellness Day was May 13th. It was district-wide, and we had 9 schools that reported in on participating in Wellness Day. So the focus of this presentation is really all that good stuff that happened on Wellness Day. So that's what these next slides are. Here's Adams Elementary School. They had what they call the nutrition decathlon, and students have to go up to a table and the teacher asks them a health or wellness question. If they get it right, then they get to go do an activity like the berry relay. Then they go back to the table again, and the table where they ask the questions is called Food for Thought table, so kind of clicky name. Anyway, they go through these, and then at the very end, after they've done all the activities, they get to go to the food tasting table. And here's Maya Lisa Van Tine handing out, I think they're tangerines, the PTSA supported by providing the fruit. And there were also some dental kits handed out to the kids they were donated by the Assistance League, and then the Public Health also was part of the program. So it was like 3 different committees, if you will, participating. Harding, similar thing. They also did a nutrition decathlon, and I think this is a strawberry relay, strawberry on a spoon. So fun stuff, gets the kids moving. Here we are in junior high, and this school did something really clever. They took wellness a little bit further, and they had their Wellness and Disability Awareness Day. So they had a wheelchair course. They had, this one is a visually impaired race course, where one student is blindfolded and the other student has to lead them through a course, and of course the fastest person wins. And the last one I thought was really fun is a blindfolded pin the tail on the Lancer's horse competition. They also did other activities like hula hoops and jump rope, and they had healthy snacks provided at each of those activities as well. And here's a school close to my own heart. We did a different date for Wellness Day because on May 13th it butted up right to the day of the prom, and we thought people would be distracted with other things, so we did it a week later. And we had 4 tables. The first one was Rethink Your Drink. Jerry Waite came and set this up for us, and it's really kind of interesting for me because it's some math involved. And you take the number of grams of sugars in your drink, multiply it by the number of servings, divide that by 4, and you get the number of teaspoons in your drink. So these little bags down at the bottom are bags of sugar, and it was like a visual to the students saying, this is how much sugar you're really drinking in that Sobe or that Gatorade. So that was fun. We also had Whole Foods come, and Isla Vista Food Co-op, and here's a picture of some girls eating the kale salad that Whole Foods got. I was really happy to get that picture because I don't think many kids would eat kale salad if it wasn't free. And here we are at La Cuesta. Paul Cronshaw, that's part of him there, handing out berries to his students. They grew the berries in their garden. They ate the berries, and then he also made green smoothies. So that looked like fun. For next year, we're only going to do 3 meetings, and the dates are kind of easy to remember. In October, it's the 19th. January and April, it's the 18th, and I will send out emails, reminders of that. Actually, I did that today before I came down. We'd like to look at having Wellness Day earlier in the year. It seemed by May, a lot of people were busy, and honestly, a lot of people lost their enthusiasm by that point in the year. So perhaps March, which is National Nutrition Month, so that might be a good fit. We'd like to look at the wellness policy in detail and maybe divvy it up among teams in our council and make sure that we have consistency from one side to another. Also want to continue researching the caffeinated beverages, your Monster drinks and things like that that students are bringing onto campus that are really not good for learning. So we need to investigate more, learn more about how we could control that perhaps, or outlaw them. That's a big hurdle, I think. Next up, I'd like to present something similar to this at the administrative meeting. So I've asked Robin Sawaski if I could be on the agenda. I know that the first meeting will probably be busy with Dr. Cash's first meeting, but perhaps the second. And the goal here is to meet and inform the new principals about the Wellness Council, and that we look forward to having a representative from each site on the council. So to continue that. And lastly, to encourage our use of the school wellness policy assessment so we can see improvement, have something actual measurable. So that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Ms. Lamone?
Well, it was great to actually attend the meeting because I learned a lot, and a lot came out of it of just best practices and more ideas to continue to improve this. I have a question. Can you share any brief results about the school wellness policy assessment thus far? Some
Sure.
highlights, just maybe 2 or 3.
Sure. I actually reported on the first in March when we had the first group of them come in. And it's kind of hard to put a number on it to say how close people were to meeting the policy. But what I could say is that there were more yeses than nos, in that, you know, they still have things they have to work on, but there's been a great improvement since it began, that there were more yes answers to the questions on the survey.
Do you have any specific things that you saw as a theme that came up, if this is something that,
I think staff awareness,
Staff awareness.
is increasing. Would you, Nancy or Debbie, agree with that or add anything?
Based on when we first started the assessment,
I'm sorry, Debbie, we need you to come up to the microphone.
based on the first assessment, I think that what has happened is it's really heightened the awareness for staff. And a lot of the assessments came in with not accomplished, and now the majority of the domains and the components are mostly completed. And it's probably about time to sit down and actually revise the assessment tool. When I originally created the assessment tool, there was a list of 100 items, and I took the key ones, and there are probably about 25 on the sheet. But it's time now, I think, to take it one step further and go a little bit deeper. I will tell you, based on my conversations with other school districts, they are not at the same point that we are in terms of the wellness policy and having an active group participate. And I have to tell you, this past year was amazing. I mean, the teachers that come, originally when we first started, they wanted stipends to attend and whatever, but the people that attend year after year are so committed, it's unbelievable. And the participation, I would say, is probably now up to about 75% of the schools, where when we first started, it was a handful. So people are becoming very much aware of how important and vital wellness is. And I think that because of the wellness policy, I think that the water facilities that have been brought onto the high school campuses, that has been, the wellness policy has had a lot to do with a lot of the change that's been going on. But thank you for your support.
thank you.
Mrs. Deacon?
Well, I would also just like to thank both Debbie and Monica and the steering committee for all your hard work, because you really bring enthusiasm to those meetings that's contagious. And I also would like to talk, there's some students who come to these meetings, and I would like to see more student participation, because they are great ambassadors for the program to their peers. And I think it's great you're going to the administrative meeting, because I think one of the things you saw in those surveys was there wasn't always as much buy-in as you wanted from an administrator in terms of supporting the Wellness Council participant so that they could do their job. And you might want to think about, and maybe you have, going to the Parent Advisory Council meetings, SPAC and EPAC, because they'll be great recruits and helpful for you as well to spread the word. And I loved how people shared ideas, good ideas for things like healthy snacks, that it was a real coming together of people on your committee of just, you know, getting those ideas, kind of that pollinization that then they could take back to their schools, and getting the parents involved in that will really be great too. So thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Parker?
I'll just be brief, but I wanted to say thank you also, because I suspect what's going on in the other districts is what I've seen unfortunately happen here too. If you don't have an active council like this on anything that we've implemented, All it does is, it's just a policy, and it's not anything that actually affects what's going on with children. And I think that having had this wellness council that's developed over time into, something that's better and stronger and has more participation, is really making this a factor for our students. And otherwise, it just wouldn't be happening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Heron, did you have a comment? No? Okay. Okay, and I just want to echo the thanks to this committee, because I remember when SNAC was starting up and we were sort of at the inception of this policy. And I have to say, I was a little dubious about how successful we could actually be with this. And I think that it's been incredibly successful in a relatively short period of time. There's been a great deal of buy-in I mean, what is really not a long time for people to change entrenched habits and sort of a culture of what had existed on our campuses for years and years and years. And I feel like even the students have recognized the benefits of this, and there's less resistance from the students than what we had originally anticipated, I think. So I really want to echo those thanks. I think when President Obama was presenting, some changes in nutritional policies for schools, and it was met with so much resistance. And in our district, I felt people were saying, "That's great, that's a wonderful thing." And I think part of it is because I felt like we were really on the cutting edge of that. And as you say, we're ahead of many districts. So I want to really thank you on behalf of the students, and it's becoming just part of the culture on our campuses to have healthy snacks, eat healthy things, and not miss, all that junk food.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
I just
Ms.
had to
Barker?
follow up, though, because a lot of times I think, especially at the secondary level, the kids don't know that what they're eating is actually kind of good for them. So I have to thank our Director of Nutrition Services on what she's sneaking into her smoothies.
Yes.
Well, they make it so delicious. That's the thing. Okay, so thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
We look forward to more great work. Okay, that brings us again to a report on nutrition services. And here, Mr. Smith, are you going to introduce Nancy Weiss?
Yeah, I was just thinking it was a nice segue, so.
It's a
here's-
perfect
Here's
segue.
Nancy Weiss. She's going to give us an update on Child Nutrition Services, kind of where it was when she inherited the program, what she's done, why she's had it under her control, and kind of where she's going.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Nancy.
Thank you for having me here speaking tonight. I've been looking forward to it for a while now, so it's nice to finally be here. I brought my notes because there is a lot that we've done in the last almost 4 years since I've had this post as director. When I was asked to step into the interim position almost 4 years ago, I inherited a department that was running in the red, almost $350,000, and was full of processed food. Everything was individually wrapped, and we were serving flavored milk, and the commodities that we were purchasing at that time were processed, heavily processed. And we had a very lean labor force, and that was apparently the model that my predecessors had thought was the winning ticket. And for years, it really was. I hear through the grapevine that we were running in the black for many years with a very lean labor force and box cutters to open brown boxes of food that were processed, and you'd stick them in the oven and heat them up, and that was their lunch that kids were getting. So historically, the department was operating from this vantage point, and we know now that diabetes and obesity is the #1 killer for kids. Kids are dying before their parents because of the kind of additives that are in our food supply. So when I became the interim director, one of the first things I did was eliminate all of the processed foods that I could But because of the way the commodities work, you actually have to pre-plan your commodities a year in advance. So when I got the position, we were stuck with about 80 cases of nacho cheese sauce in the freezer, and burritos that were plastic wrapped, and chicken nuggets, and all of that stuff that Jamie Oliver is brought to the forefront that we were serving to our kids at that time. As well as when I was in the kitchen at Goleta Valley almost 14 years ago, we still had Domino's, Taco Bell, and McDonald's delivering. And those were very popular days for the students. Those were popular days. And actually, that was a popular day for the food service staff because there wasn't really a lot of work to do. They would simply sit there and pass out this food for the kids. So today, our food service department is barely recognizable from the previous operation, and real food is being prepared by real cooks and served in our cafeterias throughout the district. An interesting fact of relating to commodity purchasing, which is a very complex portion of my job, is that the year that I assumed the position, our expenses, they weren't mine, they were actually my predecessor's expenses, were $300,000 in commodity processed food. This year, they're going to be approximately $8,000 in commodity processed food. The processed food that I purchase is, off the top of my head, pizza, because we're not able to make our own yet, but as soon as we get the remodel of the high school, we will. And pork sausage patties, because really we're not in the business of charcuterie, so I can't really, make our own sausage. But breakfast burrito or breakfast sandwiches, which are very popular as a grab and go, that pork sausage patty is a really good deal. So most of the brown box commodity that I purchase is $3.25 a case, and that's pork, chicken, turkey, cheese, pinto beans, all of it across the board, $3.25. And that is the mainstay and the backbone of what we buy from the USDA commodity program. And when I submitted my pre-planner this year, that was all we had. And it feels very good to use the entitlement dollars that are bequeathed to our district based on our ADA, and to see how far we can extend that. And when you buy locally, like we are right now, through local farmers, and then we couple that with whole muscle meat, turkey and chicken, you can actually lower our food costs, which we've done. We have a lower food cost to date than we did actually last year at this time. Our labor is up, though, and that's because we've developed a lot of extra programs that are hopefully going to secure our bottom line and secure the department as a self-sustaining department, something that we have only realized in the last year, and I hope that that continues, although our Meals for Needy calculation is going to really cut into that, and we're just going to have to work harder at gaining the confidence of our high school and secondary diners so that we can actually see those Meals for Needy, which is, for me as an entrepreneur and as a person who's always looking to increase sales, the Meals for Needy is our meal ticket, no pun intended, but it really is the thing that boosts our bottom line and gives me a sense of direction and drive when I establish the programs that I'm interested in and looking to. So mobile cafe, for one. Well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this year, we are looking at a positive net result, hope to God, of $285,000. That's significantly less than last year due to a number of reasons. One was an accounting calculation that was really, really beneficial to us last year. Anyway, this year, a couple of large one-time capital expenditures in the name of Mobile Cafe. We have two now. We have three in our district, two that we're paying off at the moment. Those are pretty sizable payments. But they're affording us the ability to expand our meal program in the secondary, and we have actually captured more reimbursable meals out of those mobile cafes without detracting from our cafeterias. In other words, kids are hopefully, it looks to me, that they're staying on campus once they've found our mobile cafe, and they're spending their dollars and their time gathered around the taco truck. And I think in the next couple of years, we're actually going to get a better snapshot of how profitable those machines are. But I'm feeling very, very optimistic that we're going to be seeing some very good things coming from those in the next couple of years. This year, it set us back a whole lot, but that's okay. There's some other programs that we've expanded on and have implemented. Summer food service program, apparently that had never really been tapped into. It's a federally funded program. It's serving kids 18 years or younger, and it keeps our staff in the food service department employed, and it feeds a significant portion of the community of kids that are our students. And we are averaging about 200 a day at 5 sites, which is 1,000 meals a day. We're doing breakfast and lunch at Franklin, which is turned out really well. We did almost 200 breakfasts this morning, and then turned around and did about 400 at her site, at Eugenia Murillo, who's a wonderful manager, who served almost 400 tacos today at Franklin. So summer food service is a break-even or better program for us. It's only the second year we've done it, and already it's showing growth this year from last. Adult and child care food program. On behalf of Debbie Badger, we decided for child development we would, instead of having them vend to us on non-school days, we would apply for the program, and we were accepted, and starting July 1st, we're going to implement the adult and child care food program, which allows us to serve year-round to child development without having to vend to you, and I'm proud of that. I think it's going to be a good partnership. So, El Puente, this is the first year of our business with El Puente. It's a juvenile community county ed program for juvenile offenders. Dear to my heart. I don't know why, but when I walked in and they were actually asking us about what we do and what we can do for them, you could just see that these kids are on their, you know, they're in a very negative situation, being confined in their El Puente school. They're resentful of a lot of things, and they're at the end of their high school career and teetering on incarceration. So offering them a healthy meal seemed like a no-brainer to me. And we set up a salad bar in their cafeteria, and the kids all of a sudden have the choice of building a sub sandwich or their burrito or their tacos or their burger, and they're eating watermelon radishes and fresh peaches today. And you can see, I was actually there today, you can see in their faces a certain bit of hope, which is powerful to me when nutrition is my vehicle, and to be able to afford that to kids that were eating out of these plastic containers, no offense to CAC, but they were really adulterated food in a bucket, and these kids would peel it back and throw it in the trash. Now we're food scrapping over there. They have a compost program. They're eating off of paper and compostable serviceware, and they're understanding, I think, a little more about respect, and it's mutual, I think. So the principal there and the other administrators, and Fred Razzo has said that he actually notices a difference in the behavior, especially in the lunchroom. So I'm proud of that one. Storyteller Preschool, that's another year-round program that has contracted with us indefinitely, as El Puente has. Storyteller Preschool is a homeless preschool for our littlest neighbors in the community. And they, again, were being fed through CAC, which was pretty much the only ticket in town, I guess, because they were cheap and it was easy. And what I try to do is make myself cheap and easy. I try to supply food for these kids that they cannot say no to. Basically, the administrators over there have contracted with us. They're paying us $5 for breakfast, lunch, and snack, and we're able to meet that and still make a profit. So I went there. I tend to go there once or twice a month because it's an incredible opportunity to see homeless preschoolers eating together in fellowship with guidance and love, and I'm their primary food supplier. It's quite a boon for me. We're grossing $90,000 annually from that program. El Puente is $130,000 annually from that program. These are gross numbers. Montecito Union School District, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum, but still children in need of good nutrition. These kids are actually hungry for good nutrition. I think perhaps it's because of their lot in life that they're ending up in the backs of their parents' cars eating Starbucks instead of maybe McDonald's, but they're still eating food that perhaps is not as nutritional as it could be. So we're running a breakfast and lunch program at Montecito Union. We do it out of the first mobile cafe that we purchased with the help of Orfla a couple of years ago. And we're serving about 200 kids a day there and about 80 kids for breakfast. The program is successful. It's self-sustaining. They had promised that they would build a kitchen that we could run, and apparently they've decided not to do that. So our mobile cafe is on the hook for another year at least, which is my pleasure. That program is $50,000 annually in gross revenue. Mobile cafe program altogether, as of today, I just signed another contract to get one for Dos Pueblos, so that I've realized my goal, which was one for every high school, plus Montecito. So one for every high school. And each of those high schools, actually, when you place a mobile cafe on their campus, they feel as if it's theirs. And I love that feeling. I have athletic directors and drama instructors and music coaches calling me wanting to use the mobile cafe to sponsor events, fundraisers. We're fully compliant. We're permissible by health code standards. So it's a win-win for all of us. And I think that it's creating a bit of fellowship and community campus unity, which is something that I feel we've gotten very far away from. Part of that has to do with the fact that we have open campuses. In particular, I'm thinking of Santa Barbara High, which is our largest. And you know, it's a blessing that we're going to move forward and build a very proper, very righteous production kitchen in that facility, because there are a lot of kids that are streaming out still onto Milpas supporting those businesses when we've got a business at hand that needs supporting. And if we were to ideally and ultimately close campuses and be able to supply all of our students a really wonderful dining experience in proper dining rooms with tables and chairs and perhaps some ambient music, I think we could see our revenue boosted to the point where that could spill over, and you know, Eric can call me down on my indirect costs and direct costs, and I would love to be able to support our district that way. We're also catering. We're keeping it completely separate. due to Meg Jate and her watchful eye and my really, really diligent accountant, we are catering significantly inside the district and out. And it's satisfying for our staff to take what they've learned over the last couple of years and actually apply it in a different venue. And we've been very successful, and that is, to date, a $17,000 gross revenue. We've replaced styrofoam in our elementary schools. I'm very proud of that. I didn't feel right serving really good food on styrofoam. It didn't set well, it doesn't look right. It was filling our trash bins, and so we got rid of it. And actually, even though our expenses in our paper supplies jumped, I'm hoping to see a diversion in trash and a realization that perhaps we've offset some of that, and there's a cost savings there. We haven't analyzed that program yet, but this is the first year that we've done it, and we are going to do a serious analysis. But we're not going backwards on that one. I just can't see serving styrofoam again. We did eliminate the spork. I'm proud of that as well, because sporks are sporks. You can't really dive into a salad, and you can't really dive into oatmeal. So we replaced that with a fork, and my personal favorite, spoon. And kids seem to be responding really well to those two utensils. It's really, really nice. So, okay. The competitive issue. Monica talked about what we're doing in our schools and how we need site administrative support, and we really, really do, because we have a wellness policy and it's spelled out very clearly, and yet it seems like I'm going round and round with administration about how to really enforce some of the simplest, in my estimation, no-brainers, like vending machines. We've been talking about vending machines for years. Nothing good lives in them. We still have them. They're on during mealtime, breakfast and lunch. That is in contradiction to our National School Lunch Program contract. If the state wants to come audit us, which they will inevitably, there's going to be a finding again, and that's upsetting to me. So I'm hoping that I can also address our principals at the next retreat that we have at some point, and maybe speak to the heart of the issue, and hope that we can, now that we're unified, hopefully we can unify some more, because there's some competitive issues that really cut into our bottom line, and our bottom line cuts into what it is that I'm trying to do, which is feed kids good food so that they live healthy, prosperous lives in health and prosperity. And vending machines are contradictory to our mission. So I'm hoping that that'll go away.
May I just ask a question on that?
Sure,
point
I
while
would
we
love
were
it.
Right there. On the piece of vending machines, it's been a while since I've looked at board policy around this type of thing. What do we say in board policy around vending machines?
We don't address vending machines.
Well, then that sounds like something that probably should come to the
And we're
boards.
actually looking at that right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
actually, Nancy's just reviewing the draft CSBA board policies on food service, so we can address it when those come forward.
That's my weekend project. I actually can't wait to read it, because it's fascinating, and for me, it's the first time since I've had this position that I can actually take the time and devour what it is that we've been trying to enforce and trying to understand. And I think that there's a simpler way of just delineating what it is that we stand for. It's our mission statement here. It's my mission statement. It's about kids. It's about serving kids healthy food. And beyond that, it's about securing our district. And that is not as difficult. Well, it is difficult, and I understand that. But there are some things that we can do, that I can do as a director, to enforce and reinforce what's going on these days. One of them is the Santa Barbara High School Culinary Academy and Kitchen which is going to be monumental for career path, for taking those students that are not going to college, that we know probably will not go to a UC, but we can actually start sparking interest at high school and launch them to City College. I think that's a really important focus for us in the years to come with this economy in this community where agriculture and hospitality are our industry. That is our backbone. And so inciting kids toward that good, I think, is going to be a win-win. They can come back and work for us. It'd be great. Breakfast in the classroom is something that I think I want to present at another time, but just to let you know that we've run some preliminary calculations, and if we were to take every elementary school kid that's in our district right now and feed them in the classroom, irregardless the vermin issue or the mess on the table, okay, $700,000 net revenue for our district if we were to serve every child what it is that they deserve to start the day with. And I would imagine that if teachers, SPTA, would understand that, would actually internalize that and let their resistance down to the idea of breakfast in the classroom, we would realize a strengthening of our district that would be monumental at this moment and carry forward in time. Every student deserves a good breakfast. And I think that the communal environment of a first meeting of the day where the teacher is taking roll call and Tom Thorlickson has said that this is going to be part of the instructional minutes is something that we need to look at very carefully because it's very comprehensive and a win-win like no other. Enhancing dining rooms, well, we're going to start with Santa Barbara High, which is going to really get an incredible facelift. It's going to be an amazing dining room. But we have a lot of dining rooms that have turned into multi-purpose rooms, and that's what they feel to the student that comes in and wants to grab a lunch. There is really no real inviting ambiance in a multi-purpose room with a bunch of tables that are pushed aside and nothing going on. I would like to start fundraising this year for a beautification program where we're actually taking high schools and turning them into dining facilities that can morph into a multi-purpose room. I understand those constraints, but it is really imperative that we start looking at maybe extending the lunch hour by 10 minutes at least so that kids can actually masticate their food, eat, relax, and in an environment that's supportive and communal. I want to increase participation by 10% next year. I think that we've already done that this year. It was amazing what Mobile Cafe just in 2 high schools did. We gained almost 15% new applicants at one mobile site in 1 month at Santa Barbara High. Those are kids that generally go off campus and eat Taco Bell. I just want to mention that my bottom line, even though I've talked a lot about money, and money is important to drive this department of ours, but the bottom line is feeding kids, and I think we're doing a really exemplary job. I think we've trained our staff really well over the last 4 years with the training that Orfala has provided us and the ongoing training that I give my staff as I go into the kitchens. This summer we even have another workshop. So that's my focus, continuing to serve good food and get as many kids eating as possible. Beyond that, I would love to see breakfast in the classroom. I'd love to see our campuses closed. And those are discussions that will carry forward into the future. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
No, but I was very happy that we could be a guinea pig of yours, and you served our
Oh, yes.
our prospective candidates for superintendent. Very, very wonderful meal, the ambience, and I'm sure that's part of the reason they all wanted to come here. So thank you very much, and your whole attitude. And
Thank you.
just what you bring to this district is fantastic.
I would like to say, if you don't mind, one more thing. I know you're probably well aware that we noticed quite a few people in our department this year. Those were food service assistant ones. Those are the assistant that would cup fruit cocktail. And for the last 2 years, we've had a job description, an open forum for people to come and apply for the cook position. I've asked our staff repeatedly to please step up and apply for the cook position, that we would train them, but just apply. And a lot of our staff did, and now they're cooks, and a lot did not, and they received their notices. I just want to clarify that even though they received notices, we just spent last Friday interviewing most of those folks, and I'm going to do my best to place most of those folks into a place where it's good for the department and it's good for them. I was not being cold-hearted when I did it, but on the other hand, as we're expanding programs, as we're serving prospective superintendents, and as we're acquiring more mobile cafes, we actually need people who know how to cook. And now is not the time to rest on where we were. We need to continue forward and start elevating the people that we have in our district, train them fully, and get them to where they need to be, which is cooking in the kitchen.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much, Ms. Weiss.
Thank
This
you.
is-
I
We all
just-
appreciate all of your efforts.
And I just had a comment. I mean, if you look at the job description that Nancy was hired in, it doesn't reflect anything relative to what she's doing now and what she envisioned. So part of this discussion was I was hoping I could bring a revised job description back to the board so you could consider that, because it's nowhere near what she's doing right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, we will look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, board members. Quick comment.
I have a quick
very-
question, actually. For the summer food program, what was the type of outreach that we've done? Because I follow the mobile cafe and I've seen it on Facebook. But I'm just curious, is there incentive to reach out to local kind of organizations? or
Ms. Weiss, could you come back up to
Yeah,
the,
sure. We canvassed areas in the neighborhoods that we were going to be serving. We did a couple of TV pieces, and then we did a couple KTYD, and we did Radio Bronco.
And I'm wondering if there is the ability, or I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but to think about some of the local organizations like Girls Inc., Boys and Girls Club, the local churches.
Well, here's the thing with that. It's very territorial. And CAC, who had been serving El Puente and Storyteller, they still are serving the Girls and Boys Club. They're serving some of the church camps around town. So I didn't want to step on them. I wanted to respect their process, but we did take back our schools. So traditionally, they were serving McKinley, Harding, Franklin, all of our schools. And I was shocked when I was first shocked that nobody had ever done summer food service before. It's really not a very difficult program to run, and it gives kids the opportunity to eat during a time when they would be sucking down Gatorade. So I didn't want to step on anybody's feet, but on the other hand, next year, because we are very successful with the program, I'm thinking that we should expand. This year, just 5 sites, though, and they're all schools, except for one, Parque de los Niños, which is a beautiful little park.
Thank you.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
And perhaps if we have any more suggestions, we can let Ms. Weiss know about any suggestions that we have. Great, thank you very much.
But Board President Cordero, I just, because this is going to weigh on me, I cringe when you said we were ground zero on the garden to table. I come from Berkeley. That's ground zero, and and I know that I'm gonna get harangued unless I correct this in public. But I think we're right after them, though. No discredit to Nancy, but that's You know, you're talking about Alice Waters and the edible schoolyard, and so that's where it started. So,
Okay, we will admit to coming after Berkeley.
but we probably do it better.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, so we are now significantly behind schedule, but we can move on to. So I'm gonna ask us to try to be as expedient as we can on our next two items. F3, update on processes and procedures for building master schedules in the secondary district. And Mr. Smith, you are going to be presenting this to
I
us?
guess so. I'm the only one here. I mean, actually, Robin and I and Brian to some extent, Brian Rouse, we've all been involved in, working on kind of reforming how we put together master schedules with the secondary principals. As you know, we had an outside consultant come in and take a look at this. He had some very specific recommendations, and then he had some more global or general recommendations, and I listed the global ones here. Essentially, the one that's the most glaring one is, hey, you've got nobody at the central office looking at this. So that was one of the issues. It doesn't help that we don't have a personnel director either, because that would be the logical person or somebody, at the secondary level. His other recommendations were to establish a timeline in terms of the development of the master schedule. We have started that. We've actually been meeting in groups with the secondary principals, and I would say for the most part, with the exception of San Marcos, most of it's pretty close to being done. We do have some, intricacies that we're working out with San Marcos, and I believe that Ann and I have a meeting with Ed on Thursday of this week, and we're trying to get through some of those issues. You remember their issue is the parity issue, and to try and staff at an equivalent basis as the other comprehensive and do it within the framework of their block schedule is going to be challenging, but that's what they're tasked to do. And so we're working along those lines. We're working on more uniformity in terms of how the master schedules are built at each of the sites, and trying to facilitate an exchange of information and ideas in terms of how it's done, so we get to a more standardized process. But once again, you can see Greg Welch's most glaring recommendation is you need somebody to monitor this. Meg talked about creep, earlier, staffing creep. Unless you have one person that can be fully engaged and hold the line on this, it's very difficult, because what happens in our situation, because we're decentralized from the sites, there's no easy way to say this, but we get end-run and things of that nature, because they're doing what's best for their site. And they'll be, very frank about it. They're going to do what's best for their site. And there's a whole lot of factors that, contribute to that. But those are the most significant recommendations. So if you have any questions about the report or any of our processes that we're currently engaged in, I'll do my best to answer those.
Board members? Ms. Parker?
Yes, I'm trying to decide which place to start on this. I think that I will start with noticing that this was a high school master schedule report. And as such, what I really noticed as a difference between a high school and a junior high was in the staffing formula that was proposed, which reflected an average of 5.5 classes for Santa Barbara and Dos Pueblos High School, and 3 for San Marcos. Those numbers are, I think, actually lower than probably what our students are taking on average, but I also recognize, of course, that there's ROP, there's dual enrollment, and TAs, that sort of thing, that have an effect much more dramatically at the high school level. Whereas at our junior highs, the kids are taking 6 periods, and they don't have ROP or dual enrollment. So I'm just hoping that there's a recognition. Well, I would expect that there to be a recognition, let me put it that way, that if the district is trying to use this exact same staffing formula for the junior highs and high schools, it will be putting more pressure on the junior highs because it's not as close to what the junior highs actual student class load is. But then the other big piece to me was finding out where you are in the recommendations. I mean, I recognize it's late. I don't really want. I'd love to see it in a board brief.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. What's been implemented? When the projections are for other stages to be implemented, and things along those lines. Because I just want to be sure that this is not a report that we shelve since we've had issues with it in the past.
That was Robin's section of the report.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I can tell you that Brian Rouse and Davis has lined all that out, and we can certainly provide that to you in a board brief.
Great. Ms. Deacon?
That's great, because that was my question too, is what have we done so far? Also, one of the points that was made was that if there was a centralized individual who oversaw everything, you actually could be some cost savings, because
Absolutely.
the inefficiencies would be addressed and eliminated. So I'm not averse to trying to locate those duties within a position somewhere like that. I just have to finally say I was really struck by this notion of standardize, uniformity. It's kind of like the location thing. Well, in this report, it was standardize.
Right.
And I think that's where we've fallen down before, and we want to honor the individual cultures of all the schools, but I think we can do a much more efficient job and still allow them to keep that.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think you've probably heard Brian describe, the high schools as cities. I think of them as more as islands, and that doesn't lead to standardization because they're not talking to each other. So I think these meetings are helpful in that respect because we're all getting together and talking about how it should be done.
Great. Well, thank you. I was actually going to suggest that it come back to us on another agenda for a further review as well. But I think a board brief is perfectly fine with me, so I look forward to seeing that.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Ms. Lamone?
One quick question. So I was looking through some of the recommendations to consider, and I mean, there's a range from things that are definitely within our control, but then there's actually a suggestion or two that are outside of our control. So I was just curious specifically on the voluntary teach during the prep periods of that has ever been explored in the past, or.
Not to my knowledge.
And I don't know that it would be explored in the future, but it was interesting that this was the recommendation, one of.
Yeah, not
By
voluntary.
They get
voluntary, it
paid.
means
They get paid.
yeah. By voluntary, it means they volunteered
To-
to be paid for an
like
extra
teaching
A
an
section.
section,
overload
and a
kinda
section's
thing.
gonna
Yeah.
cost us anywhere from like $17,000 to $18,000 a year. So it's not truly voluntary. When you said voluntary, I'm thinking volunteer.
No,
They volunteer to be paid. It's 18 a section, not a year. Yeah, but annualized. Yeah.
Well, and that's done pretty frequently at San Marcos, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, actually at San Marcos, it costs more than 18,000. And actually you've got many that do that.
so this is actually not cost savings then? It's more expensive.
Well, yeah, especially at San Marcos, and Davis probably can comment on that, because on the block, it's, it's a fourth then, right? Because I know he's run the numbers and looked at this.
Well, Brian Rouse definitely has been going over, I've been talking to Brian, but it's 4/3 versus, the difference is 4/3 versus 6/5. And so it's like twice as much money. So if it's 18,000 for the regular schools, it's, I don't know what it is,
36,000.
28,000 for San Marcos. Yeah.
But if you have an existing teacher pick up an extra section, I think you'd really have to look at it very carefully, because at the very least, you might be avoiding hiring another 1.0 with maybe saving the
Potentially.
benefits costs. So Yeah, it would.
That's
it
the
require
balancing act.
some
Well, actually, it's
investigation.
a little different from that because most of the students at San Marcos can graduate at the end of their junior year. So San Marcos has had a high excess of teachers teaching classes that were not necessary. So if you give a lot of 4/3, you're actually promoting too many students getting ready to graduate at the end of their junior year.
That goes back to the issue of, and we ran these numbers, there's a potential 320 credits there. But if you look at the average, they're earning 285, which is still significant. And so what that tells you is there are a lot of these extra sections being taught.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Then our next item, Dr. Hayden, a report on wireless access project.
Yes, before you have a report, and I just want to make a few comments and then ask if there's any questions. This was going to be a consent item, but Eric suggested that we go ahead and turn it to a conference and hopefully take action on it tonight. I just wanted to point out a few things, only a couple minutes. One of the things is that we evaluated a lot of access points. We actually had demos on 4 different access points. We looked at security features, density of coverage, initial cost factors, long-term cost factors, ease of control factors, company reputation issues, and ease of installment. And I just want to let you know that Aruba, the product that we're recommending here, was a clear winner on all but a couple of those issues. The 2 products that actually were a little bit lower initial cost, one of them actually failed several of our tests, and the other one had a much higher long-term cost. The crossover point was within a couple of years that we would start losing money on it. So we really did a really thorough it's been about a year now that we've been researching this and looking into this and going over demo products. We also did a complete test on the Aruba product in which we went into a classroom at Santa Barbara Junior High. We turned on 30 computers, unplugged their Ethernet cord so that they had to rely on the access point, and then we put streaming videos off over the internet on every single computer, and they all ran flawlessly on the Aruba product. The Aruba product was just sitting on a desktop. It wasn't really properly installed. So that was a very convincing demonstration. By the way, these products cost about, the access points is about $500 total cost to the district for each one. And you might go out and buy one for $75 at Best Buy. But you won't get at Best Buy or any of those places streaming videos on 30 computers or being able to handle the security issues or handling the fact that you got maybe 50 of these devices at one school, all of them interfering with each other. It'll just create havoc on your system. You actually have to buy a professional grade access point for the system to work. Also, another note on this, by far the largest cost that I'm asking for in this bond measure is the switches. Many of our switches are 10, some are 15 years old. They're not power over Ethernet switches, so they won't run the wireless access point, they won't run the voice over IP. The deal that we're getting from Aruba on the switches is incredible. We're probably saving $400,000 just on the switches if we went out and bought them from Cisco. So that's a really great savings. And these switches are specifically made also to run the wireless access points. They're called zero config switches, which is going to save tremendous amount of time in terms of setup, in terms of maintaining the switches at all the schools. You also notice that some of the items have 0 as the cost behind them, and that's because of the pricing structure that Aruba was able to offer us. We're getting quite a few items for free. So that was another plus of this particular bid. The final thing I want to mention on this bid is that the total price is probably not going to be $1.65 million. And the reason for that is that Aruba has agreed and CDW has agreed to ship partial orders to start with. By that, for instance, the easiest one to talk about is the mounting devices. We have a system from Aruba that allows us to mount them on the wall right where the ports are already located, which would be a very easy install. But we don't know we're going to need a mounting kit for every single access point. So we're only going to order maybe 100 at a time of the different types of mounting kits. And if we don't need to order any more, we won't. So there'll be a cost break for that. The same thing for some of the switches. We may not need to buy 225 or 221 switches. We may be able to do some swapping from switches that we already own. So there may be some savings that will bring this project down in the long term, but I need to put them into the project for right now so that we have the actual money approved for purchasing them. So those are my comments beyond what's already listed here, and if you have any questions, I've been dying to answer any of them that you have.
Well,
Comments? Or Mr. Herron?
I did email you a question, and you responded accordingly, but I guess maybe I'll ask the question just to get it on record. A year ago, it was mentioned by a consultant that this is a very extensive system to run, and whether or not we have the ability to do it administratively and functionally and do it correctly. Can you briefly give us your answer to that, how things have changed maybe in the last year?
Well, there's two things to that. One is that we've actually have this as a pilot project on several schools, and so we've been running it for a while now, and my staff, especially my 3 senior staff, which is Carol King and Dennis Ryan and Ben Graves, they've done a great job on mastering running the controller. This is all centrally controlled. Once you get the access points installed at the school, you almost never have to go to the school ever again, which is an incredible cost savings and time savings for my technicians. So they're running the controllers right now without much problem at all. But in this project, you'll notice that there's a thing called Airwave. And the Airwave controller is a management system that just makes it much easier to control. And both Santa Barbara City College and UCSB have the Airwave controller, and we've seen it in operation, and we're going to get some training on it, and that makes it much simpler to control all of the access points. So I have no doubts or no problems with the expertise of the staff running the entire system.
And that wasn't available a year ago, or wasn't?
Well, we weren't looking at that a year ago, and we were also looking at different products a year ago.
So when you go from 2 schools to 20 schools,
It should not be a problem at all especially with the Airwave controller. It should not be a problem at all. In fact, it might even be easier with the Airwave controller system to run 20 schools than to run 2 schools without it.
and you don't need much help from facilities?
Right now, the help from facilities would be mainly through the work order system. Some of the cabinets may be too small. We may have to do some work on resizing some of the cabinets, probably only a couple. Most of the cabinets are large enough to have switches in them already, so they should be fine. Some of the cabinets are going to need better ventilation to them because these switches will run hotter than the other ones. Not a lot, but a little bit. Occasionally, we might find a cable that's damaged and we have to have it pulled. But these are all normal processes that are run through facilities through the work order system. We will not be needing facilities for almost all of the installation. In fact, possibly none of the installation will need facilities or contract work.
So there's no engineering involved in this, the way you're going to be doing this? There's no
None at
engineering
all.
work, engineering drawings?
Nothing is needed of that. All the switches are already located in cabinets. All the ports are already located in the rooms, especially if we use the wall mounts. So no, nothing.
Ms. Lamone?
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You mentioned that you tested this at Santa Barbara Junior High with one access point with
Yes.
30 computers. So just from my understanding, how many access points are there per site, or an average? And then are there multiple switches? Because I can envision a lot more than 30 computers on.
Right.
I mean, if it's, besides those in the classroom, I'm thinking if students pick up on this and take their laptop or whatever it is to the site during lunch, will whatever one access point per site or whatever it is, or with multiple switches, project some of this?
Well, there's one main switch, and then there's, for most of the elementary schools, there's going to be about 10 secondary switches. And for the high schools, there'll be 1 or 2 main switches and 20 or 30 secondary switches. Each switch will control 20, 30 access points, something of that order. There will be an access point probably in pretty much every other room. The access points are all totally seamless. You can take your laptop and just walk from one end of the school to the other without dropping anything.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a problem to have 500 computers at one
It
school?
would not be a problem.
Okay.
The bandwidth that we currently have will probably support that. One of the things that down the road, which is just part of the nature of this game, is that we're probably going to have to go from 200 megabits of internet bandwidth to something higher than that as we start getting more and more devices being turned on to the internet from teachers and students.
And when you say down the road, are we talking about 1 to 2 years down the road, or are we talking about 5 years down the road?
2 to 3 years down the road, we're going to have to reassess to 200 megabits we're getting right now. Everybody knows this is happening. It's just it's a never-ending game of chasing the bandwidth.
And is there advantage to think about that now? I mean, is there a cost savings
Oh.
or absolutely not?
Well, the whole reason why we're putting in this infrastructure is that we have to have this, and we're putting in a product that can handle that, so that when we go 2 years down the road, it's not obsolete. And this is why we're going for a quality product here.
So going for this product would save us money in 2 or 3
These-
years when we reconsider?
Absolutely. These switches will handle 5 times that amount of bandwidth.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, additional questions, comments?
No, but I understand that even though this is on the conference agenda, that you would like us to take action on this tonight. I appreciate the work that you've done on it, and clearly you've set out a timeline that makes it obvious that this needs to get going. So I am happy to go ahead, and I was looking on here to see if it had the wording.
On the, I think on page 3,
Yes, I had mine online and
Oh.
I've lost the page. So
Unified Wireless Access Report, project.
I move that we approve the Santa Barbara Unified Wireless Access Project.
I'll second that motion gladly.
okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Dr. Hayden.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our conference agenda, so we can return to the consent agenda. Item D3 was pulled. I believe,
By
Ms.
me.
Park? Oh,
By
Ms.
me.
Deacon, sorry.
And Dr. Hayden probably knows what I'm going to ask about on this one. D3, it is the conference, it's the Aruba Mobility
Yes.
Boot Camp. And I had emailed Dr. Hayden a question about the cost. It seemed high to me. And in your report, you had mentioned that the package for the buying the Aruba equipment possibly would include free training, and you replied to me in the email that you're working on possibly doing that. Is this is related to that training?
Well, actually, Meg brought this up, and when she brought it up to me about an hour ago, maybe 3 hours ago, I assumed that this was a mistake because the Aruba training is going to be offered for free. So that's an item that's going to be taken off of what you just voted to pass, which of course is nice. But it is a 5-day training, so the person that goes up there is going to have to spend 5 or 6 nights in a hotel. I don't know how it's going to work out, and travel. So that might actually exceed the $1,000 limit. Okay, so it might be right on the edge of the $1,200 limit. So it's only one person, it's not 2. So I think what we're asking here for is approval for the travel for hotel and mileage or whatever to go to the training. The training will be for free. So and it's only one person that is going to go to the July training.
So it's going to be less than $3,000 for one person for 5
Yes, it'll
nights?
be less. It'll probably be somewhere in the vicinity of 1,200. It
Okay.
may be a little over. It may be a little under.
You said there'll be another person going.
Well, that'll be maybe 6 months down the road, and I'll put in another request for the travel for that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to go ahead and approve it. I just, because I saw in your report that there appeared to be some
Yes,
free
I
training,
understand.
and I saw this, and I was trying to figure out how we were spending $3,000 on just a hotel for one person for
Yeah, I
5
got
nights.
that.
So anyway, I will move to go ahead and approve D3.
For the two
Approve-
people? For 2 people or for 1?
Oh, did you just say it
I
was
say
just
there's only one
person?
going in July, but Meg points out there will be
But
one
that's-
going later, so.
And there's 2 listed on the agenda.
So if you approve
So
for
do we
2,
wanna
that's
approve
fine
Okay, if
with
I
me.
that
approve for
once?
2 now, it'll take care of both. I'm fine to approve the, well,
But that should still end up less than $3,000.
It should, yes.
yeah, because as I mentioned to you, I was just up there and spent
Yeah, I know.
considerably less than that for several nights, so anyway. Okay,
Okay.
so is my motion clear?
Is there a second for
I'll
the
second
motion?
that.
Okay, now
And-
discussion. Ms.
And I have a
Lamone?
question. So I noticed that this says general fund, and I thought we had frozen travel on general fund, so I'm wondering if this is an exception or I missed something.
You guys would probably have to make an exception. I don't know. Yeah, we pretty much froze everything in January, so this would be an exception.
Did we freeze everything for 10-11 or for 11-12 or just ongoing?
The way I see a freeze, and I used to have this ongoing debate with Dr. Noel about it. I see a freeze being in effect through year-end closing. So basically, if you initiate a freeze in January, it's good through June 30th, and then a new budget year starts. So the freeze, and is this an 11-12 expenditure?
I think it would be,
Yes.
yeah.
Then there's no freeze
Okay.
yet.
Yet.
Well,
Until we approve
Pardon
one.
me?
So,
It's bond funds also.
well, this
No,
is
this would not
this
be
travel
bonded.
isn't.
Fund.
No, but I understand, but implementing Aruba, wouldn't it be like a fixed asset where whatever it took to implement it would come out of the bond funds?
If you wish to do that, it's fine with me.
Yeah,
It's just a comment.
you would have to make that nexus. It's more difficult to do that. I mean, it's just cleaner to go forward with this right now.
so I guess my only concern is that we haven't made that decision, and what's to say that something that's not as important is going to come to us, and that someone would want us to consider coming out of the general fund.
That's more
So I'm trying-
important than
To,
this?
to me, I feel like we should just be consistent because something else could come up that's equally important, and
Well, I
Well-
think it's general fund out of his own budget. So it's not like hitting the bottom line. Remember, whether you're business or IT, there's a variety of different budgets that are funded out of the general fund. When a freeze goes into effect, we pretty much freeze everything except for things that are mission critical. So until such time that a freeze is put in place for 11-12, pretty much anybody could be bringing a travel and conference request forward, whether it was maintenance and operations, IT, business, whatever. So I don't think you have that trade-off yet. You might have that trade-off later in the year if we have to initiate a freeze, but as of July 1, there's no freeze. The freeze is in effect until June 30th of this year.
Okay, Ms. Parker?
Well, just the one other thing I would add about the freezes is I've never seen us implement a freeze before January.
Right.
So that will be
And
probably when we need to address it, if we're going to do it.
Right.
And it's probably unlikely we'll initiate a freeze this year because when freezes become commonplace, they're no longer effective because people
Yeah, now,
anticipate a freeze.
Because I can tell you, I see the pattern, and if I were a principal, I'd be
And so
doing
we
everything
didn't,
before.
so we didn't have a freeze, and then this year we had a freeze, and they were all caught, off guard, and so I would expect that will show in our ending balance.
all right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
And no freeze.
I just realized, is somebody keeping track of these motions and that we've been making?
I was doing it for a while until I had to
Chris is
present.
making a record of it.
Thank
so,
you, Chris. We may need this. Okay, so I believe this was made by Parker. No, made by Deacon, sorry.
Seconded by Parker, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so we are at the end of our agenda. Coming events. We don't have Dr. Sarvis here to tell us about any coming events, so I will just announce that our next regular board meeting is Tuesday, July 12th at 6:30. The public session will begin at 6:30. Future agenda items. I think we discussed the possibility of asking for, I just realized I'm not sure who's keeping track of all of this. An update or a review of our expulsion process. And were there any other items?
The inter-district sort of
Oh,
update.
that's right. We wanted an update on our interdistrict transfer policy and whether we ought to be reconsidering that.
Okay.
And we will have our new superintendent by then, and so this will be giving them something to jump right in with, to begin
Yes.
with.
One
Okay.
thing that I discussed maybe a year ago, and it came back today in the budget process, that I'm curious about, and I don't know if it's possible, but in the actual versus ADA, we dropped to a difference of 594, which was a significant drop for the average over the last 7 or 8 years. And it's projected to go to 731 in 2011-12, which is a 137 increase, which amounts to about $850,000. I'd be curious to know if it's possible, how did we drop to 594? What did we do right? But also, how does that difference relate to the various schools? Are there some schools where there's no problem and other schools where there might be a problem? And if we find out that there are schools that have a bigger problem, focusing on those schools.
By problem, you mean loss,
But, yeah,
loss
I
of
mean,
students?
where is this difference? If it's an average over all the schools and all the schools are equal,
You're talking about attendance?
attendance.
Because that's on our annual report that we get on each of the school sites.
I don't know where it is, but it just
Dr.
seemed to me
Hayden
that
can tell you.
it's,
Well, yeah,
if we're
we know where it
progressing,
is in the secondary district over the last couple of
yeah,
years.
if we're going up 137, is that 137 at one school? Or is it, 5 schools, 10? But if we're going to focus on attendance and getting people into school, it'd be good to focus on those schools that have a problem, if there are such things.
Okay.
Okay,
Maybe
so we
Dr.
want to have a review
Yeah.
of that or an explanation of,
Just a review is to determine, what did we do right to go to 594, which is that's a 150 student drop from last year. But yet we're going to project to go up 137 this coming year. This year. This year's projected 731 difference, and we just finished the year was at 594. That difference is $852,000.
okay, so we can determine whether that is, Dr. Hayden, I don't know if this is part of your,
I guess
Purview.
my
But-
que- my
but
question
my-
would be, when was the last one done for all the schools? Is that about a
The
year
board
old?
focus goals has the attendance for each of the schools and what percentage of students are going, and I keep updating that. The last one I think was updated in January or something like that. So it is online and you can find it there. The projection though is usually done by Eric, right? You usually do the projection analysis and then I come along and give the actual numbers of kids attending.
okay, so I'm gonna request, Dr. Hayden, that maybe you and Mr. Herron confer about whether the information that he is requesting is already in place. And then if not, we can bring it forward, or if it's already scheduled to come forward in a future report, at least we can know when it's coming. Okay, so is that satisfactory? Okay. All right, Ms. Lamone?
So I actually can't remember if I read this in a board brief or not, but I know Mr. Herron brought up the fact of televising our board meetings in Spanish, and I would actually like to see a discussion on that, and hopefully action on that soon. But I was trying to think, did I read? No, okay.
Yes, and as I recall, you made a suggestion that we could even alternate, 1 week in English, 1 week in Spanish.
Well, what really has
Or
got
one
me
meeting in English, one.
lately, we were told that there was no time available.
Right.
My goodness, the city college meetings, they're on all the time, in
Yeah.
prime time. But
Yeah.
we couldn't get one anytime until
So
11
we
o'clock at
can try
night?
to, we can either
Yeah.
try to negotiate a time or,
Alternate.
or consider this
Consider
alternating.
alternating, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we can bring that back on a future agenda. Okay, well then, I think that brings us to adjournment. So,